He thought tonight was just another blind date. But when she leaned closer and whispered, "I'm not here to fall in love. I'm here to thank you," his entire world stopped. Imagine sitting across from a stranger and realizing she's someone whose life you unknowingly saved years ago. Tonight isn't about romance. It's about fate, second chances, and a single moment that changed everything. The cafe slowly grew quieter as the evening crowd thinned, leaving only a few lingering voices and the soft melody of a saxophone drifting through the room. Ryan couldn't take his eyes off Emily. Every word she spoke carried a calm strength, as if she had lived through storms and learned to find peace in the wreckage. He wanted to ask her more, but he was afraid to disturb the fragile emotion that hung between them. For the first time in years, someone had looked at him not with pity, but with gratitude. It stirred something deep inside, something he thought had died with his wife. Emily took a sip of her coffee, then smiled faintly. "You probably don't remember, but I do. You told me to hold on, that everything was going to be okay. I was so scared. The car was burning and I thought it was over. But you didn't run. You stayed until I was safe." Ryan swallowed hard, flashes of that stormy night coming back. The sound of rain pounding on metal, the heat of the fire, her terrified eyes. He remembered driving away after the ambulance came, soaked and shaking, too broken himself to face anyone. As she spoke, Ryan realized how little he had valued his own actions. To him, it was just instinct, a fleeting moment of courage in a life full of loss. But to her, it was everything. Emily reached across the table, her fingers brushing his hand. "I needed to meet you," she whispered. "Not just to say thank you, but to show you what your kindness created." She showed him a photo on her phone, her standing in a hospital uniform beside a group of patients. "These people, they're alive because you gave me a second chance to become this person." Tears welled in Ryan's eyes as he looked at the photo. He had spent years trapped in guilt, blaming himself for the accident that took his wife, questioning why he survived when she didn't. But now, across from him sat living proof that sometimes pain can ripple into purpose. Emily smiled softly. "You saved me that night, but in a way, you saved countless others too." Her words sank into his heart like sunlight after a long winter. He didn't respond. He couldn't. He just sat there, letting her voice fill the spaces that silence had claimed in his life. When they finally stood to leave, Ryan walked her to the door. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement outside, and a light drizzle began to fall. For a moment, they just stood there, neither wanting to say goodbye. Emily turned to him, eyes glistening. "You thought this was a blind date," she said softly. "But I think it was something more, maybe. Fate just wanted us to meet again." Ryan smiled faintly, his heart heavier and lighter all at once. "Maybe you're right," he whispered. As she disappeared into the rain, Ryan realized he hadn't just met someone he once saved. He had met someone who just might save him back. The months that followed were filled with quiet, beautiful moments that reminded Ryan how healing doesn't always come with noise or grand gestures. Sometimes it arrives in the form of shared silence, gentle laughter, or the warmth of someone who simply understands. Every time they met, it felt less like chance and more like something the universe had carefully planned. Emily would talk about her hospital work, the patients she cared for, and how she often thought about the chain of kindness, how one act could ripple through countless lives. Ryan would listen, sketching on napkins, rediscovering pieces of himself he thought were lost forever. On a cool autumn evening, they stood again by the Brooklyn Bridge, a place heavy with their intertwined pasts. The wind carried the distant sound of sirens and the hum of traffic, but between them, there was peace. Emily turned to him, her eyes reflecting the city lights. "Do you ever think about how one night can change everything?" she asked softly. Ryan nodded. "Every day, I used to think the crash that took my wife ended my life, but maybe it was leading me to you." Emily's eyes shimmered. "Sometimes tragedy isn't an ending. It's a doorway we don't understand yet." Her words settled deep within him, and for the first time, Ryan didn't feel haunted by the past. He felt thankful for the journey that led him here. As seasons changed, so did their connection. They started spending holidays together, not out of obligation, but because being apart felt incomplete. Ryan designed a small garden on his apartment rooftop, a quiet space filled with lilies, Emily's favorite flower. She would visit after work bringing stories and laughter while Ryan prepared dinner. There was no rush, no labels, just two people slowly learning how to live again. The pain that once defined Ryan now felt like distant echoes, softened by her presence. One evening, Emily looked at him and said, "You gave me my life back, but you've also shown me how to live it." He smiled gently, realizing the same was true for him. A year later, he invited her to that same cafe where it all began. The staff recognized them instantly, smiling as if they were part of a story too beautiful to forget. The jazz music played softly, and Ryan couldn't help but think how full circle it all felt. He reached into his pocket and placed a small folded drawing on the table, a sketch of the Brooklyn Bridge under the rain, with two figures standing side by side. Emily opened it, her eyes glistening. "You kept drawing," she whispered. Ryan nodded. "Because you gave me something to draw for." He leaned forward, his voice tender but steady. "That night I thought I was saving someone. But now I know I was being saved too." Emily's lips trembled as she smiled, her hand finding his across the table. "Maybe," she said softly, "some souls meet twice, once to survive, and once to love." The cafe lights glowed around them as the first raindrops touched the window, the same rhythm that had once tied their fates together. Outside, New York moved on with its noise and chaos, but inside that small corner cafe, two lives that had nearly ended years ago had found a new beginning. Because sometimes, destiny doesn't shout. It whispers, "Thank you." As they sat there, two souls bound by one act of courage, Ryan realized something powerful. Sometimes you don't meet people by accident. Sometimes fate sends them back, to remind you that even a single act of kindness can echo for a lifetime. And in that quiet cafe, under the same rain that once changed both their lives, two hearts finally found peace. Not in love at first sight, but in gratitude that never forgot. If this story touched your heart, don't just scroll. Hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who still believes in second chances. Because sometimes, one share can inspire another miracle.